Is it okay to be friends with your ex?
My marriage is more important.
You're not having this guy in our wedding.
Hey, we are no longer friends.
I avoid drama like the plague now.
Now, I don't mind cutting people off. I think that's okay.
There is no way he's your best friend.
Yeah.
Multiple couples have been formed from our friend group. Communication in marriage is so essential.
Everything.
Sex included.
You need a safe space.
I don't really want their advice.
Guys are available for each other.
Because you have such little emotions that the availability range
Exactly.
is so small.
Jim's now doing drugs, so we're not friends anymore.
Welcome back to the Couples Edition with Alli and Elie. This is a podcast where we share our perspective on intentional dating, navigating marriage as two people from different races and cultures, and taking big risks to live an adventurous life.
And today we will be discussing how to deal with friendships in our relationships and some of the standards that we've set, and even how we deal with friendships of the opposite sex. But we also want to hear from you. We want you to tag us, DM us, and let us know how you're thinking about friendships in your relationship.
So Elie, obviously you and I do friendship very differently.
A lot differently.
That's an understatement. What are some things that you think really jump out to you about what we do different?
One, I think guys are a lot more direct and a lot less touchy-feely, warm, fuzzy. And so that said, I think one way that we do things differently is I think I'm like really and always pretty straightforward with my friends, and I don't sugarcoat things. And that could be things about us, or it could be things like with them. I don't try to people please or walk on eggshells with them, making sure that they feel warm and fuzzy every time I tell them things that might upset them, regardless of if it's about you or me or them. So I think that's one big way. And another way, and we can obviously continue to dive deeper, but another way is I think guys just have like less expectations. Guys are just chill. Guys don't need much. You ever see those videos on YouTube or Instagram where they're like, how guys become friends? And it's like two guys walking in a hall, and the first time they like nod heads, second time they like do two nods or something, and then next time they're like hanging out and like dapping up, talking about sports. Next thing you know it, they're like at the same cookout together.
And then they're at each other's weddings and they're best friends.
Exactly. Yeah. Guys are just so chill. But girls, I feel like, need all this like intentional conversation and sitting down and discussing life and getting deep into the heart. And I love that for you ladies. I love that. I just don't think that guys function that well, and guys in my circle. So I can only speak from my experience.
Honestly, it is so hard to believe how you do friendship, because your friendships, from my perspective, and I think just women in general, I'm going to speak for all of us on this.
Okay.
They're so surface level.
Really?
Most of the time. Like when you come back from hanging out with somebody, whether it's one of your best friends or somebody you just met, and I ask you like, how'd it go? What'd you talk about?
Yeah.
Your answer is the same every time.
It was great.
It's like, it was great. We talked about business. We talked about, work, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's new with them? Like, oh, they're good. They're cool. Meanwhile, I come back from hanging out with a girl, whether a new friend or an old friend, and it's like, oh, well, she's struggling with this, or, she's, we just talk about so much more than you guys talk about.
Yeah.
And it almost saddens me for you guys that you don't have that depth.
Yeah.
And then it annoys me in other ways that you think you're best friends with people that from my perspective, you barely know.
Yeah, right. I think with girls, it's like when you guys have conversations, it's like a psychological thriller. You guys go through like all these like mental and emotional nuances to like get to the point and figure out how you doing, girl? Oh my goodness, he did that. Oh, then he did this. And whoa, how did that? And for guys, it's just like a pretty chill, I don't know what genres are pretty chill. Like, pretty chill comedy. A lot of laughter.
It's like, you good, bro?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. It's, a lot of chill.
Did you see the game last night?
Yeah, exactly. Really easy. And, but I think that's just kind of how we do friends differently. So I think for me, I use that opportunity to just like, I think have like, straight shooter conversations with my friends. But again, I think that guys are available for each other emotionally and mentally.
What? Emotionally?
Yes. I think that they are available. I just don't.
That's because you have such little emotions that the availability range
is
so small.
Exactly. I don't need my guy friends like, I don't need a shoulder to lean on all the time like I think girls do. But again, that's just because my emotions don't get all that, wavy per se.
Your emotions are this just flat line every day. Elie's happy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I was going to say, I think that a lot of guys are available for each other, but I don't think that guys go out of their way to pour out to each other about everything like girls do. Yeah. Like if I had a bad day, I'm not going to pour it out on my best friend just because I know he's available. I might tell him, yeah, you know what? Today kind of sucked. My boss did this. My coworker did that. I had a bad day with Alli. This happened. And then he, would probably say some encouraging words and then we move on. But with girls, you go into this deep thriller about.
We're getting the full life story. He said what to you and what were you wearing and where was he sitting and how was he looking?
I love that. That's amazing. And that's why guys and girls are different. And I think it's really awesome that you guys have that.
Yeah. And I don't know how you guys function, but I think another big thing where we really saw a difference in this was in planning for our wedding.
Yeah.
You wanted to have 30 dudes in your wedding party.
Yeah.
And when you were reading me the list, I'm like, bro, I've never even heard of that guy before.
Right?
There is no way he's your best friend to be close enough to be in our wedding.
Yeah.
That's insane. And to you, you're like, we were best friends when we were 12. And even though we haven't talked in 10 years,
he's still a homie.
We still got that connection.
Right.
And I'm like, if I haven't talked to a girl in multiple years, not that we had beef, but we're just not friends anymore.
Right.
It would be so weird to reach out years later. I mean, of course, there are situations where that's happened.
Sure.
But I think just in general, to reach out years later and just kind of pick it up nothing happened is usually weird. I feel like there are friends you can do that with if you were really close and maybe you just moved and so distance grew.
Yeah.
But in general, I just feel like girls don't do things like that.
No.
It's if we haven't talked in a year, I don't think we're friends anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. To me, I feel like guys, it's almost like on Facebook, right? The friendship marker never goes away. It just always stays unless someone intentionally goes on there and removes a friend. But I think guys are just hey, once we're friends, we're always friends. And I don't have to speak to you every year for our friendship status to maintain active.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say that that's a big difference between you and I and even, girls and guys. I'm sure for some of you out there, let us know what you think. But I think that I can be friends with someone, not talk to them for a couple years, and our friendship status is still active. Nothing's changed. It isn't you have to renew it every year through conversation for it to stay active. Yeah. It's just always on.
That's crazy to me. And definitely we fought multiple times about that during wedding planning because I was you're not having this guy in our wedding. You haven't talked to him in years.
Because there's a cost.
For me, it wasn't the cost thing. It was just having 20 to 30 groomsmen. Well, not only does it look ridiculous.
It wasn't 30. It was 12. It's 12 and then it became 10.
You narrowed it down, but the original list was even longer.
No, it wasn't. It was 15. And then it was 15
18.
and then it went to 13.
I think it landed on 18.
And then it landed at
We actually had
10,
to compromise,
I think,
on your wedding party because we could not come to an agreement on what a definition of a close friend was. So you ended up having what you called stage groomsmen of people who walked the aisle and stood on stage.
Honorary groomsmen.
And then honorary that wore the same outfit.
Absolutely.
But sat in the crowd.
Absolutely.
I've literally never seen anybody do that. And I thought it was so crazy.
And what's funny is that I remember after we got married, some of my other friends, you don't know them because I've never mentioned them to you. And
Which means they're not that close.
Whatever. But they started getting married. And I remember showing you pictures of their 15 groomsmen. And I was like, see, this is not weird. It's not weird. And I'm sure their wives were up in arms about it. But I think that it's pretty normal for guys to have a lot of friends.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's definitely a point of contention that we've kind of just moved on and agreed to disagree on.
Yeah.
But for me, when I look at my friendships, it's you have your inner circle of people that maybe you call them best friends or maybe they're just people you can go to about anything. You probably talk relatively regularly. Yeah. And even if you don't, you're still close enough that you could say anything.
Yeah.
And then you have the next layer of good friends. You can spend time with them, but you're not necessarily sharing the most vulnerable things.
Sure.
You're having fun.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, I don't think you have those different brackets.
Yeah.
It's just one or two people at the top and then everybody else.
Exactly. Now, yes, that's true. I think that's generally true. But there are some people where I'm like, hey, we are no longer friends. And maybe there isn't a reason per se, but there's a life change.
Give me one example. We'll beep out the name.
Sure. I mean, I won't mention the name because we don't need to, but I would say like there's a friend of mine who I think has like maintained a lifestyle that just isn't healthy for me.
Yeah, okay.
He parties a lot, does drugs, and will sometimes like if we weren't together and if I was, more available, would invite me to, to participate in all these things as much as he is. And for me, it's like, that's just not a lifestyle that I want. Therefore, I've stopped responding, I've stopped engaging. Therefore, I would say I've passively denied his friendship.
Do you make hard cuts in friends, like in that scenario, or was it a hard cut? You don't talk anymore, or you just?
Yeah, I just kind of stopped. And then I just kind of stopped. I think that is the hard cut, is you just stop responding and stop engaging.
Yeah.
But I feel like with girls, you guys have a conversation, you sit down and say, hey girl, I feel like you've been doing this. And
not necessarily.
Hey girl, I feel like my life is going through a different situation and I think it's time for us to part ways. I feel like girls talk like that. And then guys are like, well, Jim's now doing drugs, so we're not friends anymore.
Girls will definitely have deeper convos, but I don't think if we're parting ways often, like sometimes it's either just a slow phase out.
Oh, okay.
Unless something bad happened where it's like, yeah, we're not friends anymore.
I see.
But for me, I avoid drama like the plague now. So anybody that would even have that type of drama, I just probably am not friends with to begin with. But I think in long-term friendships, it is healthy to have those conversations where you can talk about, hey, this hurt me or this made me feel a certain way. So that way you guys can learn and grow together.
Yeah.
And anybody that isn't willing to have that type of conversation is also somebody that I'm probably not friends with.
Sure.
Because I want those type of relationships where if you hurt me, I know it probably wasn't on purpose.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk about it because maybe it's a pattern and maybe you don't realize it. And then we could both learn and grow together and have a stronger friendship as a result.
I get it.
As opposed to just like cutting somebody off.
Sure.
I definitely do not cut people off anymore unless something crazy were to happen, which it doesn't.
Now, I don't mind cutting people off, and I think that's okay. I don't do it, but I don't mind cutting people off. I feel comfortable doing it. But yeah.
Yeah, if it needs to happen, like you said, somebody who just isn't a good fit for your lifestyle, then sure. But I feel like at this point in our life, we're not really starting friendships with people that aren't a good fit.
Exactly.
To begin with.
Yeah, because you're not forced to be in the same like cafeteria with them, same classroom with them. You kind of get to pick and choose as an adult.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great. So now that we've talked about that, I'd love to hear a bit about how have you dealt with maintaining friendships since we've been married or engaged, like going through that entire transition of being single and having your friends, but then finding me, or Prince Charming, and having to continue having those relationships with your former friends who are still your friends.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a big transition that happens when you're single and you start dating somebody. And I always had a pet peeve of watching friends who, we were close while we were both single, and then they start dating somebody and they fall off the planet.
Yeah.
And they just go hard into their new relationship, and all of a sudden, like, they're not reaching out anymore. They, they just stop being your friend, kind of.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but they just don't make time for friendship anymore. That was always a pet peeve of mine. And so I always wanted to be really intentional, like when I start dating someone, to not do that. And I think I might have taken it too far, because when we started dating, I think there were multiple instances where I was trying to explain to you, like, no, we need to be considerate. Like, maybe we don't hold hands around them if we're just one-on-one. Because there were times where like one of my friends would be like third wheeling us because we were just casually hanging out. And I would say, like, let's not be too lovey-dovey around them.
But I love you.
Because I didn't want them to feel bad.
Yeah.
And I think that is
considerate.
Yeah. But I think you have to still set expectations with friends and with your partner about how you navigate that transition. Yeah. Because I think it is really hard, especially if two girls are best friends and then one of them starts dating. And obviously, like, their time is going to change. Yeah. And both friends have to understand that. But I still think you need to prioritize relationships because so many people just fall head over heels in a relationship and act like they don't need their friends anymore.
I know, it's sad.
And then when they break up, all of a sudden they start calling and your friends are like,
where have you been?
Who? Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it was weird when you would be overly considerate about your friends who are single but hanging out with us because you'd be like, well, what if she's having a hard time dating? And what if she's going through things? And I'm like, what do I care? I like you, so I'm going to hold your hand if we're walking down the street with your friend that's third wheeling with us. But that speaks to how kind your heart is and how aware, you are about people's feelings.
I was trying to be mindful because I think I've been in those shoes. And so I just wanted to like love everybody. But then it did start to cause tension with us because there were multiple situations where it was like, oh, I feel like my friends expect me to do this.
Yeah, talk about those situations where I felt like you were people pleasing.
Yeah, and that is something, I don't know why, right around the pandemic, I don't know, I started to become more of a people pleaser out of the blue.
Yeah.
Kind of around the time we got engaged.
The COVID effect.
Yeah, the COVID effect. And so I got really nervous of letting my friends down, but then I would start to let you down in some ways. And so I definitely don't think I figured it out or did it right. But I think my advice to anybody else walking through that would be to set clear expectations and boundaries with both friends and a partner.
Yeah.
And I think a way we do that in marriage is with our calendars.
Yeah.
Which is your idea. So I'll let you talk about that.
Well, I think it's great. By our calendars, it's like we try to set up time for us to spend time together. Date nights, but it's actually more than just date nights. If you look at our calendars, like we go to the gym together, and while that isn't like a couple activity because we go together, it's like a minute or 2 or 3 walking to the gym together, and it's nice, right? But that's not that big of a deal. And then we have our like afternoon walks. Now it's been harder lately, but we oftentimes will go on an afternoon walk for 30, 40 minutes around the block, around the corner to a different neighborhood, maybe if we have time. And that is like a good amount of time for us to spend time together. And we have that like mentally blocked on our calendar.
Or physically blocked. Like we have Friday morning walks that are hard blocks.
You're right. Friday morning walks are blocked on our calendar. So I won't take meetings at, 8 or 7 a.m.
Tell them our secret time.
I know. Because then people are going to try to set up meetings with me to disturb me from our walk. And then on Saturdays, we also have time together that is blocked.
Yeah.
Which is great. Then outside of that is friend time. Outside of that, I think
free time. We
call it free time. Do what you want to do. If you're working, obviously get your work done. But if you want to hang out with your friend, hang out with your friend. And there's no misunderstanding of, oh, I thought we were going to hang out. Oh, I thought we were going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, hey, we have time to spend together. Actually, I missed something. Every evening we try to hang out together. And most of the time it's watching TV or watching a movie.
Yeah, we try to end work at the same time so we can spend like an hour and a half together.
Exactly. And for us, that's like 8:30 to 10:15, 10:30. And that's every day. So we spent about like 2 hours and 30, maybe 45 minutes a day together.
Yeah.
That's a good amount of time, I think. It's pretty healthy. And so outside of that, yes, free time, be with your friends, create time with your friends, which is important. I think you should intentionally be finding ways to spend time with your friends. How have you been spending time with your friends?
To touch on that, it's so important to maintain friendships in a relationship. I feel like some people think once you have your best friend and your partner or your spouse, you don't need friendships the same way. And I could not disagree more with that. I think having some close girlfriends is like the best outlet. And I always, this is true for both of us. You and I both, when we come back from hanging out with somebody that we're close with, we are so much happier. And it's almost like we got, like this refreshment or this new life kind of breathed into us because we got to bond and connect with somebody that gets us, that we could maybe share things or whatever.
Exactly.
We always come back better. And so I think when people are in a relationship and don't have close friends, I think they're missing out on like an essential part of life. And I just think it's so important to prioritize. And I think something else that we do in regards to calendars is if I know I'm going to hang out with somebody on like a Tuesday evening, I'll usually send you an invite just so you know I'm going to be gone. Because it also sometimes reminds you like, oh, Allie's gone. Maybe I could hang out with somebody. Not that you couldn't if I wasn't gone.
Sure.
But it kind of like encourages us like, oh, if he's hanging out with somebody, I should reach out to a friend. And it's like a good reminder.
We're mutually busy. With our friends. Therefore, it's great. Rather than you being at home alone watching Netflix and I'm out with a friend. I mean, again, you could do it, but it's nicer when we're both out and then we both come back.
And when we overlap it, so that way it's like I'm not gone Tuesday evening and you're gone Wednesday evening, and then we miss 2 nights together. Instead, we kind of collab it. What about you? How do you maintain your male friendships?
I'm in a group chat or multiple group chats with my friends that I'm close with. And we have a great time in there, talk about random stuff that girls should never know about. And then I also try to find time to like grab dinner with some of my guy friends or grab lunch or do something together. Now, I'm the kind of person where I like to set aside quality time to hang out with someone. I'm not very passive. If I have a really good friend, I'd rather like schedule time to go see them and hang out and spend time together. I'm not like, I think what you do that I don't do is you'll jump on a call with someone and just like talk to them for 15, 20 minutes, even if it's like 8 minutes or 10 minutes, just like whatever. And for me, I don't know why personally, maybe guys, if you're listening to this, let me know if this is you as well. But for me, I feel like I prefer setting time aside to like hang out for an hour and just hang out and talk and not be distracted. So I think that's one thing that I do. And I've also realized that there's so much benefit to that for me at least, and I'm sure other guys would find this beneficial as well, because there are certain things that I'm interested in that you're not. So Amen. I don't get to geek out with you about those things, which is natural. If you and your spouse might not love all the same things together. But for me, I feel like when I hang out with my guy friends and we share some of the same, geek out things, we can then geek out about those things. And you come back and you're like, wow, I discovered more things about, that thing because me and John Smith talked all about it versus me blabbing to you about it. And you're like, I don't care about that.
And that's the value of having friends outside of a relationship, because you often have shared interests, and some of those interests might not be the same that you have with your partner. So you can go on a rampage talking to somebody about coding, and then I can go on a rampage talking to somebody else about my interests,
Yeah.
And it's like a nice balance.
Yeah. I think I realized that you weren't going to be my my sports geek when you asked me what's that Warriors player's name?
Oh my God, Festus Ezeli.
Festus Ezeli.
I had a good reason.
That's when I knew.
I assumed when I stopped seeing him around, it was because he got traded, because I don't watch it that closely to keep up on trades. Yeah. So when I saw him stop being in all the Warriors ads and like branded as a Warrior, I just assumed that he was traded somewhere else. Yeah. That is a fair assumption.
That's when I was
don't act like I don't know sports.
I was like, yeah, we're not going to be, we're not going to be sports buddies.
Dude, I woke up to watch football with you.
You're right.
Do you remember?
You're right. Maybe
it was like 8 a.m. I woke up to meet you at the sports bar so we get breakfast burritos and watch football.
You're right. You are a good
I will watch football any day of the week.
Yeah, you love football.
I don't really like basketball though. So Festus, I'm sorry. But at least I knew he was a Warrior, and at least I knew his name, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. I feel like that's how I do it. What about you? How are you finding time with your friends to hang out? Do you schedule things? Like, obviously, you told me you do use your calendar, but how else do you catch up with your friends?
A game changer with some of my friendships lately, especially because we live in such a transient city like San Francisco.
Yeah.
When you make friends here, more often than not, they're going to move away at some point.
Wow.
And just even friends I grew up with in the Bay Area, a lot have moved.
Yeah, you're right.
And so some of my closest friends don't live in San Francisco.
Aww.
And so one of the game-changing things we've done to stay in contact to avoid having a 2-hour catch-up phone call, we've been doing voice memos.
Really?
Because it's like having a phone call where you can update each other on something, and then at your own time.
Yeah.
And then they can listen to it at their own time and respond at their own time.
But don't the messages disappear after you listen to them?
I mean, I wouldn't want to listen to it twice. So you just listen to it once and then you respond.
Oh, I see.
It's like a walkie-talkie in a way.
Well,
like
a conversation.
You listen.
You don't just record a conversation and keep it in your files.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a slow convo where, you share something and then they listen and respond, and then vice versa.
Okay.
That's actually been such a game changer.
That's really cool.
But other than that, with my local friends, I try to either, because I go to a lot of events around the town that you often don't want to go to. Yeah. I use that as an excuse to invite friends to come hang out and catch up.
That's awesome.
Been really nice outlet.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I love that for you. We also have a couple friends.
Yeah.
And these are friends that you know the woman and I know the man, and we've just become friends over the years, which is amazing. How have you seen that kind of play a role in our relationship or just in our life? Per se?
I love our couple friends. I think it all kind of started when right after we started dating, it was fresh off the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I had started a hiking group during the pandemic to help people make friends. And that was still going when you and I met.
Yeah.
And so I had a hike coming up, I think shortly after we started dating, and you invited a bunch of your friends to show up on my hike with you.
Yeah.
And that was when our friends started to kind of intermingle.
Yeah.
And then next thing we know, two of our best friends, my best girlfriend and your best guy friend, they met on one of those hikes.
They did.
And now they're married.
Now they're married.
So I think something that's been really cool about us is we have overlapped our friends really early on. We even did that our bachelorette parties were a joint weekend. So our friends got to hang together a little bit then as well.
Also, just side note, but related, one of my groomsmen married one of your bridesmaids.
Yeah. I mean, multiple couples have been formed from our friend groups, which is awesome. But I think it's also a testament to how intentional you and I both are in our values and the things we enjoy. We cultivate those type of friendships. And so because we have so much aligned, I think our friends end up having a decent amount aligned.
That's true.
So it's kind of cool how many couples have come out from our friend groups.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think it's been awesome that we've been able to build a community and this little small group of couple friends that we can hang out with and enjoy time together.
I agree.
And I think having couple friends can be so valuable because when you're close enough, you can share real marriage things.
Totally.
And talk about, the transition into marriage. And, with one of our friends who are newly or married, they're talking about roommate drama, which we had.
Yeah.
So, we can kind of all relate and build off and encourage each other.
Right.
However, there are definitely situations where we've had couple relationships that we were like, oh, this isn't really a good fit as a couple.
Yeah.
For example, if you're friends with somebody and they have a significant other and, you try to make it a couple thing and we hang out 2-on-2.
Yeah.
And then afterwards it's like, oh, yeah, I don't know that we're like really a good vibe or whatever. We've had that both ways where I've tried to bring one of my friends and their person. Yeah. And, we're just like, not that there's anything wrong or that there's any beef, but sometimes I think
just incompatible.
It's just incompatible.
Which is fine. Natural.
Yeah, like where you might have a lot in common with the friend, but I might not have a lot in common with the spouse and vice versa. Yeah. So it's like I think we've agreed like, okay, in those scenarios, let's not try to force it.
No way.
Let's just hang out one-on-one with our friends. Exactly. And then for couples things, we can hang out with other people that is just more natural and well aligned.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, how have you been, I guess, like dealing with sharing of information with friends? Obviously, girls talk a lot about stuff. And so now whenever you have a girlfriend from our couple group, how are you dealing with, sharing information and that kind of stuff? Because you've got some of our information too, right?
That's something that I remember us aligning on really early. I don't know if somebody gave us this advice or if it's just a general notion that you need to be mindful of who you share personal things with from your relationship with. Totally. Like there's an old saying, or I don't know where it comes from, that essentially you shouldn't be talking crap about your spouse to your family. Yeah. Because your family is then going to hold on to the drama. Yeah. And you guys have made up, but they haven't made up.
Exactly.
So you're not supposed to share everything with everyone.
No way.
And so something we did early on was we aligned on like who is one or two people that we trust that we give the other person permission to say anything to. Yeah. And I think that's been
a safe space.
A safe space. Yeah. And I think one of the ways we've been able to pick that, and we were talking about it earlier, is it's nice when out of our couple friends, maybe we have a couple that you're best friends with him, I'm best friends with her. Yeah. And because of that, the four of us get along really well. Yeah, sure. So I feel like I know your friend relatively well and he knows me relatively well and vice versa. Yeah. So I can talk crap about you to her. Yeah. But because she knows you well enough, she filters it through that lens and isn't holding it against you the way somebody who doesn't know you as well would. Yeah. And I think that has given me a lot of comfort. Like if you need to go vent to him, you can say whatever you want. And I trust not only my relationship with him, but I trust him as a person. I think that's really important. Yeah. Is I trust him as a person that he's not going to give you bad advice in return. If you're talking crap about me or like saying crazy things, he's probably more likely to hold you accountable than to bandwagon with you. Yeah. And I think when we've agreed on two people for each side. that we could say anything to.
Yeah.
Something that all those people have in common is not only have we hung out as a foursome where we all kind of know each other.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a safe space.
Sure.
But also we trust their character.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about them giving you bad advice when you're down bad with us if we've had a fight or something. Yeah. I know that they're going to hold you accountable to your standards and what you value.
Yeah. Now, what are some types of things that you share with some of those friends? Just so people can get an idea of, well, what's the value of these friendships, right? Are you sharing about, you know, how annoying Elie is sometimes? Or are you sharing about I don't know, like personal money issues and things that you're having? What are some things that you're deep diving into with your friends?
Yeah, it's relevant that you're asking me since we've already established earlier that men don't often talk about these things
I want to know.
Or go to deep levels. So I'm really the only one that can answer this because even though we've designated people that you could talk to, history has taught us you don't really.
Right. At least I want you to believe that.
You don't have the need to vent, whereas I've definitely vented about you multiple times.
Yeah.
And I think some instances are like maybe we had a big fight about something and I thought you were being a jerk.
Aww.
And I just wanted to talk to my friend about it. And what's really cool about that is there was a specific fight you and I had about a year ago. Yeah. And I was really upset about it. And I remember I had hung out with this friend shortly after and I laid it out for her, like how I was so upset, whatever. A year later, you and I had a complete change of heart on this topic that we were fighting about. Yeah. And I got to share like the praise report with her of like how we had grown and changed and how you had become better in this area.
I'm just kidding.
And just getting to share that success even with her that like we walked through a low point together and she encouraged me. Yeah. And then on the other side to be like, you know, look how good God is. Or
what was it about anyways? Guys, we'll talk about this in private.
We're going to be open on the podcast, but
not that open.
We don't need to share every nitty gritty thing. We're going to be open, but I don't think we need to rehash every fight because it's not relevant to this topic.
Okay.
But another example is talking about very personal things like girls. Maybe not all girls, my friends, we'll talk about sex or like something vulnerable that like maybe somebody needs encouragement on. Like, hey, this isn't working for you. Have you tried this?
Yeah.
Like we'll talk about that.
Whoa.
And I actually think that's really helpful because
I'm drinking my tea because I'm learning new things.
I think that's really, I mean, we're not going into like, you know, personal details about like our spouses per se, but maybe just general topics that are honestly helpful because if you don't have anybody to talk to certain things about, you might think something is normal that isn't normal or vice versa.
So is it more like educational or is it like psychological thrillers where it's like, whoa, this happened and then whoa, that happened, but dang, then this like what are those conversations like? Or is it like, here are some steps that you have to take if you're trying to accomplish this?
I think it's neither. I think it's in the middle where it's like, hey, have you guys struggled with this? What are some things you did? And I think oftentimes my advice, particularly as it relates to sex, is you have to have open, honest communication. We've talked about this either last week or the week before, where communication in marriage is so essential on everything, sex included. Like if you guys can't have open and honest conversations about what's happening there, you're not going to learn and it's just, you're kind of going to be stuck. And so I think my advice more often than not is like, have you guys talked about it? Have you communicated this? You know? So those are some of the conversations we have. And I know the guys don't usually talk about things like that, but you know, we go there.
Well, I feel like that's definitely valuable. And if anything, people should take away that you need a safe space to be able to share some of the things happening in your relationship with a healthy friend that can see perspectives, but also recognize that the spouse that you're talking about is on your side, is on your team, right? And know them enough to support that versus bashing on them because they just don't know, right?
It's so important that it is a safe space and that the friend you're going to, you trust their advice. Like I'm not going to go talk crap about you to someone who, whether by how they're living their life or just their perspective, I don't personally align or agree with. I don't really want their advice.
Of course.
And I think that's true in all things in life, which is why it's so important to have a close inner circle of people what's that expression that show me your 5 friends and I'll show you where you're going?
In 5 years.
Yeah, because the people that you are closest to, that you do life with, you guys impact each other for better or worse. And sometimes it is these conversations. Are they giving you good advice or bad advice? Like making sure you pick the right people is really important.
Yeah, I could say that I could probably do a better job of having more and deeper conversations with my guy friends. So for any guys out there listening, I'd say don't follow my advice, or I think I could be doing a better job. I just don't think that my circle of friends gravitate towards those topics. They're all like very business minded and entrepreneurial and, you know, sports geeks. So they just gravitate towards those topics.
If there's not a need for it, there's not a need for it. I don't think, you know, guys need it in the same way girls do.
And you're so perfect. So I never need to rant about you.
So true.
Yeah. Like you never cause any issues for me to go and complain to my guy friends about. So come on. No need for it.
You're right. Every week we do a section called Deep Dive Tea Time where we ask a juicy, possibly controversial question to share. Yeah. So this week, as it relates to the topic, the question is, do you think it's okay to have close friendships of the opposite sex while in a committed relationship?
Until someone is married, then I think there isn't commitment. To me,
interesting.
To me, being married is where the commitment begins. Being engaged is where it kind of like starts. As in, like, you're in the process. Do you love me? Yeah, I love you. Let's get married. Cool, let's get married. It's not we are married. I think once we are married, here's how I see it. The opposite sex friends that you have been friends with, I think they kind of like stay in that status. They're like, they're still there. They're still friends, whatever. I don't think you should be adding more. So let's just say, we'll have some examples with fake names. So let's just say I'm friends with Betty Boop, okay? And you and I start to date, and I've already been friends with Betty Boop. And let's just say that her and I became really, really good friends. And then you and I get married. I think she still maintains a really good friend, and nothing happens to her. But on the other hand, this other girl, Sarah, that works at my cafe or goes to my cafe, I don't think it's necessary for me to increase my relationship level with Sarah, regardless of how often I see her or how close she is. I don't think it's necessary, simply because I think it just gets hairy to add on new friends, new relationships of the same sex. That's how I would see it. And that's how, you know, that's my perspective on it. What's your take?
That's wild to hear you say that you're not committed until marriage. I'm like, one, you did not live that way. So, like, why are you saying that now?
I didn't live that way, but that doesn't mean that I didn't believe in that. That's why I got married. And that's why we got married soon. And that's why I was okay getting married soon, because I actually did live that way. But some people get engaged for like 2-3 years. And I get it. If that's the timing you need to get your budget and all these things ready to get married, I totally get it.
I mean, I feel like when we got engaged, we agreed that we didn't have issues with close friends of the opposite sex that we had already been friends with, that we knew before we met each other.
Yeah.
But we agreed that it didn't make sense to make new close friends of the opposite sex.
Sure.
And I think just even naturally in marriage, you have less of a need for friendships like that in a way.
Ideally.
Like even the people that we were friends with, both from the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Life has just naturally kind of taken us in different directions, whether some of my guy friends have moved and pretty much everybody's married now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, life just naturally has evolved in different directions.
Yeah.
But I think we agree, like, if I met a new guy at a coffee shop or something, it would be kind of weird for me to, like, become his best friend.
Yeah.
Because why would I be investing that much time?
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just, we've never had an issue with that. But I feel like that is a really big thing for people.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think a lot of couples talk about is like, is it okay to be friends with your ex?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I guess the answer is no, it's not okay, because their purpose was to be the boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, you know, they were. And once that purpose is completed, done, over, I don't think that you reestablish them as a friend. And I get it. People have different situations and scenarios. There are definitely nuances. So this isn't completely black or white. But from my perspective, there's no need to bring someone back from the dead, you know, simply because you know them.
I think any relationship you've been that close with before, whether you were physical or just really close, it's weird to still be in connection. And I think we briefly touched on this in a previous episode, but like for us, we agreed to unfollow like on Instagram or social media any past relationships, and talking to them is just weird. To your point, like what's the point?
Yeah.
They weren't the right one. It didn't work out, but obviously there was some sort of connection there. Yeah. So why even entertain it any further?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it just creates different layers of complexity in a way. And I think to protect your relationship with your current spouse, significant other, I think it's fair to cut ties with the past just so there aren't any questions. And it's simply because no one wants to have to ask their current spouse, hey, how do you feel about the way that Sarah commented on your picture on Instagram? Yeah. She seemed over enthusiastic about your work promotion, right? So I feel like there's just, it's pretty unnecessary. But here's a fun one. I was sitting at a dinner with some guys, and these are all business guys, and we're talking about how to deal with opposite sex business associates. And so one of the questions were, if one of your friends needed help with a business and the business was struggling and it was doing really, really bad, and they are the same sex as you and calls you at 12 in the morning, would you pick up?
The opposite sex you mean?
Yeah, actually, yes, opposite sex. Okay. So opposite sex as you. Well, actually, it's both, because you have to figure out what would you do for one or the other.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So if a business associate of yours called you at 12 in the morning, and she is a woman, obviously, and she says, "Hey, Allison, I'm having a hard time with my business. It's struggling, and we're gonna shut down tomorrow." Would you go and help them at 12 in the morning? And would you?
Beyond just this topic of gender, if anybody is like last minute calling me at 12 in the morning, first of all, I'm not going to be awake. My phone's probably on do not disturb. Yeah. So I'm probably not answering. So I feel like a little foreplanning, maybe the day before perhaps, makes a little more sense.
Sure.
But if it was a girl, would I feel more first of all, I don't like leaving the house that late anyways. Just as a woman going out into the world at midnight alone, it just feels more dangerous. Yeah. But I know the root of what you're asking is like, would I feel comfortable being alone with a work colleague that's a girl at night?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I've had many late nights working at the office with girls and guys.
Yeah. Now, what if it's a business associate that is a guy and his office is 15 minutes away from here, and he calls you and it's 12 in the morning and he needs your help because you're a guru in whatever he's struggling in and his business fails tomorrow?
Is he alone at a corporate office? Is he alone? Like,
yeah, he's alone. He's alone at a corporate office.
I think alone at a corporate office is different. I think when you told me this scenario previously, it was like alone at a hotel room or something. Yeah. Those to me are very different. Yeah. Like I've had many late nights at the corporate office putting together a deck before a big meeting. And I've had close work husbands, we can call them. Sure. Which is another topic. Work husbands, work wives. I've had both. Yeah. And we've been at the office late together, and it's never been a weird thing. Yeah. But I think showing up to like a hotel room late, that is weird.
To fix a business issue.
It's weird. Meet in the lobby.
Meet in the lobby.
Yeah, there's desks and tables in most hotel lobbies.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting because at this dinner, this half of the guys were like, yeah, of course, I would show up to the hotel room to help keep this business afloat. And others were like, no way, good luck to your business. My wife, my marriage is more important. And I definitely respect that. I think that you should obviously have boundaries and feel comfortable talking about those boundaries with your spouse about how far would you be willing to go to potentially compromise our relationship.
Yeah, I just think there's some nuances just generally with the opposite sex. Like I've heard men in leadership roles say that they will never be alone in a room with a woman with the door closed. Yeah. Just because even if nothing happened, just the idea of impropriety that somebody from the outside might suspect or imagine and just the reputation it could cause. I think that is also something to consider is just what it could look like. Yeah. Like I think there was a situation once we were in London. Yeah. And you went to meet up with like a distant friend and you guys went to a hotel bar or something.
My cousin.
And you ended up talking to two women at the bar. Yeah. And you came home and told me about it. Yeah. And I was pissed. Yeah. Because I was like, it looks bad.
Yeah.
Even if nothing bad was happening, because obviously I trust you and I wasn't worried about you doing anything.
Yeah.
I think the look of two men sitting at a bar with two women looks bad.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, like not necessarily to care what other people think.
Sure.
But I think especially, I mean, we are on social media, we're doing this podcast and we're talking about relationships.
Yeah.
So there is even a certain standard that I think we have to set and maintain.
Yeah.
And I think if there's like a photo these days going around of like you at a bar in that scenario, I'm like, honestly, that just looks bad.
Yeah.
Like regardless of the circumstance, I just think it looks not great.
That's fair. And I think that like, you know, that might be an area where we kind of disagreed on because it was unplanned, unstructured, but
yeah, and I think both the women were married,
and they were also married, exactly.
But like from the outside, people don't know that
exactly,
and it looks like you two are on a double date.
Yeah, but then if no one knows us, then it doesn't matter, right? It's kind of
sure, but in this day with social media and just I don't know.
Yeah,
I think especially if you both of us have interest in like either building companies or growing in some form of influence, whether it's because we've built companies or things on social media, whatever, you have to be more mindful of those things. And I think it's ignorant to think that perception doesn't matter, because I absolutely think there's many cases where it does.
Yeah, sure. I definitely I agree. And I think people with ill intentions will find ways to
manipulate
sabotage
situations too.
Yeah. Sabotage your situation. Okay, here's another fun one. Whenever you are hugging a man of the opposite or hugging someone of the opposite sex, well, at this dinner that I was also at, one of the questions was, do you chest to chest hug someone of the opposite sex, or do you shake hands and keep it there, or do you side hug? How do you deal with
Shaking
that if
hands
you're
is
in
wild.
a relationship? Really? I feel like I always shake, women's hands.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like that's weird if you're not in like a formal setting. I think if you're just casually meeting somebody at like a happy hour or just out and about.
Okay. Well, true. Well, you know what? Let's talk about this. If they're not a friend yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
Some
a lot of
people
people you meet, like let's say we're at a 4th of July barbecue and there's 50 people there.
Yeah.
You're probably meeting a ton of new people.
Sure.
That's a really weird place to shake somebody's hand.
Really? Oh, I thought that was the opposite. I thought that was the best place to shake hands.
Really?
Because
like
there's
at
so
a
many
friend's
people.
barbecue?
Yeah. So
I feel like oftentimes you might not touch at all, especially if you're kind of like entering a group,
Well, here's my stance is I shake everyone's hands. Unless if you are...
I've never noticed that.
Yeah, okay. Unless if you are in my inner circle, unless if you're like considered a friend, I will most definitely shake your hand. And it's happened before at work where you go to, obviously an office is one area, but my old company was fully remote. And so we would only meet once a year physically. And so people use that excuse to hug everyone because you see them once a year and it's in person. So they just hug everyone. And I'm the kind of person where I will extend my arm 10 feet before I see you just to make it clear that I'm a handshaker.
I had no idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually seen someone get a little bit offended by that, not because they liked me or thought I was interesting, simply because they were a hugger and they were a toucher. And that's just who they were. But for me, it just makes it easier for me to just set a standard or like a default setting that I shake hands and it's what I do. And
why? Because you're married?
I think part of it is just like leaving no room for question. And so everyone gets the same treatment. It's like Sarah doesn't get a hug, but Sabrina gets a handshake. No, you all get handshakes. So that's my stance on it. You're only getting a hug if you're in my inner circle.
I don't really have a strong stance on it. I think obviously like it's one thing if the hug is sexual and like a girl is pushing her boobs into the guy.
Yeah, whoa.
I mean, like I've seen that a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
In work settings?
No, just like in casual, like maybe friend or you're saying goodbye or meeting somebody.
Oh, wow.
I think definitely in like my earlier 20s, I saw that a lot.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I think
raunchy
like
22-year-olds.
that's a unique situation. But I think in general, hugs are casual. And I feel like most people kind of arch their back anyway. So it's not really like a pressed situation.
Oh, wow. There's different positions that people do.
Oh, yeah. There's a difference between like an arched hug versus like a...
It's intentional. So whenever you hug me, do you arch or do you extend?
I mean, neither, because we're hugging so closely. We're like pulled into each other.
Aww.
So it's a little different. But I think in general, when I'm out hugging people, I mean, I don't know that I ever did the arched thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, to me, it's not like that sexual unless somebody tries to make it sexual.
I see.
So I personally don't see anything with
HR.
hugs. However, I have noticed when I hug married men, oftentimes they will go for the side hug or a very, guys do this too, or a very arched and I think even me, I kind of like pat the back a little just so it's not like
they just like extend their arms out and just like pat your shoulders.
I mean, kind of, yeah. So I think I'm intentional too, because I wouldn't want a guy to feel uncomfortable that's in a situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't read that much into it or think that much about it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really make me uncomfortable. And I didn't know that you primarily did handshakes.
Yeah, I definitely. Handshakes are much easier. You know what? Even socially, they're easier because when you're trying to hug someone, you've got to figure out the mechanics around whose head goes left, whose arm goes up, goes down.
Yeah.
If it's a side hug, who steps in with their hip closer than the other. There's so much going on. Handshakes were they're great. They're easy. Whoever invented handshakes, we love you and we needed you.
Yeah. Okay. So in summary, what do you think is key advice to give people who are navigating friendships as a couple?
Be mindful of the specific friends you have and how they interact or fit into your new relationship, simply because you have to be able to distinguish yourself between someone that hangs out with a lot of single people that do single things, and those single things might not be healthy for your relationship. And maybe you have single friends who are just, they're chill, they don't do crazy things. But I think that choosing wisely is super important. I think another thing about choosing is also choosing your spouse, is recognizing that who you're dating and who you're spending time with is going to need to be around your friends, I think, to have a full community and a full life. So I would say, think about who you are dating and how they fit into your social life. For sure, that way there's some compatibility versus having that friend, or having that spouse that all your friends hate. Because they're just they never do things that, they enjoy.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to bring the person you're dating around your friends early, because like we've said previously, your friends ideally are going to be open and honest about what they see in that relationship and whether it's a good fit or not and what red flags they see. And it's important to listen to people who love you and have your best interest.
Yeah.
But I also think that goes both ways. Yeah. That if you're dating and married to somebody who has your best interest, that they might be able to see some toxic things in friends that you might have let slide for years and didn't know about. Yeah. So I think overall being intentional, which obviously is a key principle that we live by and on this podcast, but also setting expectations, both with your friends and with your partner about how to navigate that and what your priorities are, and how often do you want to see the girls versus how often do you want to have date night, and where's the free time in between. Absolutely. And all the things. You only get there if you communicate. Yeah,
communication is huge. Talk to both parties. And it seems like we're making a big deal about it, have a whole conference meeting. No, just be able to have conversation about how relationships fit into your friendships, how friendships fit into your relationship, to whatever extent that it makes sense for you. That way, at least you're doing it the easy way versus being surprised and feeling shocked.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome.
And that's that for friendships. Next week, we're going to pick up where we left off in episode 1. We skimmed very high level over how we met and why we got engaged in 3 months. So we're going to deep dive into how we knew we were the one and why we got engaged so quickly.
Ooh, that's
a lot of people told me they wished episode 1 was longer. So we're going to fix that and go add more detail and share all the juicy bits. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to come back next week and jump in.
See you guys.
Bye. We're out.